classroom. Today we're going to be talking about a very brief history of technology and just kind of some of examples of technology, kind of how things progressed. Again, it's going to be very brief, but I do hope that you enjoy this lesson. So to kind of, start discussing the history of technology, we're going to kind of think back to 1450 with Jonas Gutenberg's printing press. You can kind of think of that as maybe one of, the first kind of technology that we've seen. So here is a photograph of that. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see kind of they use the presser to press down, and that would allow them to print different things using the ink, things like that, which eventually led to the progression of printing, which is kind of the copy machine and printers that we see more of today. So just kind of how it progresses. So some other examples, Ben Franklin's lighting rod in 1792, or Eli Whitney's gin in 1794 could also be considered as well. Some examples of technology that were, kind of newer, records, playing music on them, the record player, eventually leading to CDs, leading to the iPod, then to iPhones, and just, kind of getting more digital with that, as well as tape recorders and slide projectors or overhead projectors that were seen in education, VCRs, so just even thinking about these things and how they've progressed and how things have changed. And as well as 8-tracks and players. Those are just kind of some of the examples of technology, and all of those things have developed, and we are using new things to listen to music, even in education. VCRs aren't really used anymore. DVD players aren't used as much as when I was a child. So now we're going to kind of talk about a brief history of computers, because computers are kind of, the thing that changed a lot of technology and, gave the world access to a lot of different information, kind of how that blossomed. So I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about that. And when we think about computers, this might, photograph, everything gets stored in there. And that was kind of known as, the beginning of computers, which obviously things are much different now. Again, this will be brief. It's not, elaborate, just kind of some of the main points. So kind of think of the 1960s to the 1970s. IBM and its first operating system in 1960 was kind of the beginning of the computer age. Okay, so the optic fiber, which looks like this, lots of different fibers sending lots of different messages, was created in 1970 by Corning Glass. invention that, GTE and ATT would capitalize on much later to transmit voices and pictures. So this is the optic fiber. And then in the 1970s, Bill Gates and Paul Allen presented Apple to the world in 1976 and Apple II in 1977. It was complete with a keyboard, game paddles, and a cassette tape with the game Breakout loaded on it. The computer hooked up to color television for colored graphics, and then Tandy released the first desktop computer in 1977. That's just a little bit about, the 60s, 70s, and kind of how it progressed. In the 1980s, IBM's version of PC was introduced, and in 1981 it included Microsoft's MS-DOS operating system, and the first portable computer cost $1,795, and this was introduced in 1981 by Adam Osborne. So just kind of a little history there. We've got the optic fiber, and then Bill Gates and Paul Allen came out with, more of the desktop look with the keyboard, and then they were able to get color on it, and then IBM's version had, included the Microsoft system, so it's kind of just progressing. And then in the 80s as well, the display was a floppy disk, so this was 5 inches and could hold 64 kilobytes of memory. So that was, kind of storage of the 80s. And then Apple, in the mid-1980s, Apple unveiled Macintosh, and IBM introduced the PC Junior, which again looked very similar to kind of the desktop look with the keyboard. In the 1990s was the birth of the World Wide Web, or WWW, or W3, and it was invented by Tim Berners-Lee, so WWW, and this is the World Wide Web that you all use today. And this is a system of interlinked hypertext, documents accessed via the internet. And how you use it was you use the web browser, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, to view web pages that may contain text, images, videos, or other multimedia, and you navigate between them using hyperlinks. So to get on the World Wide Web, you're going to use, www, and it was kind of designed to be a pool of human knowledge and human culture, which collaborates in, different sites to share their ideas in all aspects of a common project. So after the World Wide Web came URL, HTTP, and Netscape. And this kind of became the everyday language of the World Wide Web. So URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator, or Universal Resource Locator. And it's a character string that specifies where a known resource is available on the internet and the mechanism for retrieving it as well. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So HTTP is a networking protocol for distributed collaborative hypermedia information systems. And this is kind of the foundation of data communication for the World Wide Web. And then Netscape. So Netscape Communications is a U.S. computer service company, best known for Netscape Navigator, its own web browser. It's an independent company, and the headquarters are in California. And it was a trademark of Cisco Systems that was granted to the company as well. In the 1990s as well, I'm sure you've all heard of it, Yahoo. The search engine giant was founded in 1994. So that was Yahoo, so the search engine, kind of what we all think of as Google today, but Yahoo was the first. And then Windows 98 and Intel processor released in 1998 and 1999 respectively. Apple's iPod, MySpace.com, and about 1 billion people worldwide connected to the internet in the 1990s and 2000s, so kind of late 90s, early 2000s, that was happening. And we also saw kind of a progression of cell phones, which now cell phones have the internet as well. So you can see here, kind of they got smaller. It's got the large one with the antenna. Then you can see they get smaller and smaller. And today's even looks a lot different than this. It's kind of like a mini computer. So the internet, you all know of that. It's a global system of interconnected computer networks that use the standard internet protocol suite of TCP or IP address to serve billions of users worldwide. Worldwide interconnection of computers and computer networks that facilitate the sharing or exchange of information among users. And the internet, as you know, carries a vast range of info, resources, services, within the World Wide Web, and it's got the infrastructure to support electronic mail as well. So Google began in March 1996 as a research project by Larry Page and Sergey Brin, with students at Stanford working on the Stanford Digital Library Project. And the goal was to develop an enabling technology for a single integrated universal digital library. So to kind of put all of the things on the internet in one spot, and you can look for it. So it's kind of how it progressed. So, we, in the 60s and 70s, we had the optic fiber. Later, Bill Gates and Paul Allen, had kind of the first Apple I and Apple II that had a keyboard, game paddles, cassette tape. Then we had, the computer hooked up to color television, which allowed you to have the screen. And then Microsoft, floppy disks. And then, the computer just kept developing after that. We had the World Wide Web, URL, HTTP. And then search engines came about. And then eventually we've got iPods, MySpace, different processors that we could use on computers, cell phones. And the internet, became a search web. So you're able to look different things up. And then Google. So, there's many developments after Google as well. And, YouTube, things like that. But I hope that you enjoyed this brief history of technology. And thank you for watching. See you later.